Okay, I want you to picture this. It's 1757, Paris. A guy named Robert François Damiens has just tried to assassinate King Louis XV. His punishment? It's basically a public holiday dedicated to absolutely gruesome, stomach-churning torture right in the town square. We're talking burning sulfur, boiling oil, and literally being pulled apart by 4 horses while crowds watch from rented balconies. Wild, right? But now, fast forward just 80 years to 1838. We're looking at the daily schedule for the Maître Reformatory in France. You rise at the sound of a drum at exactly 6 a.m. You dress in total silence. You enter the workshop for labor at 8 a.m. Every single minute is micromanaged. In less than a century, society went from the bloody, chaotic spectacle of the scaffold to the incredibly mundane, ultra-strict timetable of a quiet cell. So that presents us with this massive historical mystery, right? Why did we make this crazy transition so rapidly? I mean, at first glance, you'd probably just say, well, we got more civilized. We figured out that literally tearing people apart was cruel, so we invented prisons to reform them instead. But did we really just suddenly become nice? Or is there a darker, far more calculated reason that we stopped destroying bodies and started locking people inside boring, silent boxes? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are unpacking what is easily one of the most mind-blowing, perspective-shifting texts of the entire 20th century. I'm talking about Michel Foucault's 1975 masterpiece, Discipline and Punish. We're going to explore exactly how power evolved, why our modern world looks the way it does, and how the invisible cages of our society are literally built right in front of our eyes. Let's start with part 1, the myth of humane progress and the reformer's dream. So back in the 18th century, these philosophical reformers, they were dreaming of a justice system full of humane, poetic, public works kinds of punishments. But that is definitely not what happened. Instead, the system just gave us the dark, standardized box of the prison. Foucault argues that public torture didn't die out because of human kindness at all. It died because it was a terribly inefficient system. First off, unpredictable crowds often rioted. If a prisoner was brave on the scaffold, the crowd might sympathize, and suddenly you've accidentally turned a criminal into a hero. Second, these executions created a literal physical space for new crimes. You've got this chaotic crowd watching an execution, and boom, pickpockets go to work, anti-government pamphlets get passed around. It was messy. And third, destroying workers? That was highly inefficient for emerging capitalism. Killing or maiming a criminal was just a massive waste of human labor that the Industrial Revolution desperately needed. Honestly, public torture was just a really bad, unstable design. Moving on to Section 2, 2 types of power, sovereign versus discipline. Now, this shift in how we punish people, it represents a massive evolution in how power itself actually operates in our society. Just look at how sharply the old world contrasts with the new here. On one hand, we have sovereign power. This is the old school power of the king. It's spectacular, it's violent, and it focuses entirely on crushing the physical body to show absolute dominance. But then, look at the new era, disciplinary power. This kind of power doesn't belong to one single tyrant. Instead, it's diffused all throughout everyday institutions. It is completely invisible, quiet, and its target isn't the physical body anymore. Its new target? Your mind, your habits, your soul. Disciplinary power doesn't actually want to destroy you. It wants to invisibly train you. Which brings us to Section 3, creating the docile body and the ultimate goal of discipline. As populations absolutely exploded in the 18th century, you had generals, schoolmasters, merchants. They were all facing this one huge problem. How on earth do you manage and organize massive groups of people efficiently? Well, their answer was to create what Foucault calls the docile body. Basically, this is a human being who is highly trained, highly efficient, and just completely obedient. Think of a soldier marching in perfect unison, or a factory worker doing the exact same motion hundreds of times a day. See, the genius of modern institutions is that they do not want to break your bones. They want to gently and systematically break your spirit, until you actually start to believe that your obedience is your own free choice. So how do you pull that off without physical violence? Well, institutions use 3 quiet but highly effective weapons. Number 1 is hierarchical observation, or the gaze. This is architectural surveillance. We're talking glass doors in schools, raised platforms for managers in factories. Just the feeling of being watched keeps you in line. Number 2 is normalizing judgment. You aren't just judged by the strict law anymore. You're judged against the norm. Are you faster, slower, quieter, or louder than average? If you deviate from the norm, you get corrected until you slide right back into the middle of that bell curve. And finally, number 3, the examination. This basically combines the first 2.
Think of a routine medical exam or a standardized school test. It takes a living, breathing human being and turns them into a case file, a test score, a tidy set of data points that can be scientifically managed and controlled.
Let's step into Section 4, the Panopticon, an invisible surveillance. We are now entering what is basically the absolute peak of disciplinary technology. This is a concept that's going to fundamentally change how you view your everyday life. Let me introduce you to the Panopticon. Invented by the English philosopher Jeremy Bentham back in the late 18th century, it is this brilliant, terrifying architectural marvel. I want you to imagine a giant circular building. The outer ring is divided into all these individual prisoner cells, perfectly backlit by outside windows. Now, in the absolute center of that circle is a guard tower, fitted with dark, zigzag blinds. Because of the backlighting, the guard in the center can clearly see the silhouette of every single prisoner in their brightly lit cells. But here's the catch. The prisoners can never, ever see into that dark central tower. So the crucial point here is exactly how this design manipulates the human mind. Because the prisoners can never know for sure if the guard is watching them, or honestly, if the tower is completely empty, they have to assume they are being watched all the time. They internalize that gaze. So what happens? They stand up straight, they follow the rules, they stay quiet, even when absolutely no one is looking. Physical chains become completely unnecessary because the prisoner's own mind has literally become the cage keeping them trapped. They have become their own warden. And this brings us right to Foucault's legendary, absolute mic drop of a question. He asks, is it surprising that prisons resemble factories, schools, barracks, hospitals, which all resemble prisons? Boom. Foucault isn't just talking about 18th century architecture here. He is talking about the buildings that you and I walk into every single day. That leads us perfectly into Section 5, our modern invisible cages, and why the prison is actually a success. To really understand our modern world, we first have to take a hard look at the actual institution of the prison itself. For 2 centuries now, everyone has known that prisons are an utter failure at doing what they claim to do. The data is crystal clear. They do not reduce crime rates. Actually, they cause massive recidivism, acting essentially as schools for crime. They create a class of permanent outcasts who can't get jobs, and they completely destroy families and entire communities, perpetuating a brutal cycle of poverty. By its own stated metrics, the system has completely failed for 200 years. And that leads to a pretty massive plot twist. Think about it. If the prison is such an absolute, well-documented failure, why on earth do we keep funding it? Why do we keep building more of them? Foucault challenges us to look at this totally backward. What if the system isn't broken at all? What if its failure is its success? Foucault argues that the prison was never actually designed to eliminate crime. Oh no, it was designed to produce and manage a very specific kind of crime. The prison creates what he calls delinquency. By taking criminals out of their communities, branding them with a permanent mark of shame, and turning them into repeat offenders, the state creates this isolated, despised class of criminals. And what does this actually achieve? Well, it prevents working-class rebellion, for one. Plus, it makes the general public so utterly terrified of these delinquents that regular citizens will happily beg the government for more cameras, more police, and more surveillance right in their own neighborhoods. Let's draw a direct bridge to the world we are living in right now. On one side, you've got Bentham's 1791 Panopticon made of stone and light. But on the other side, you've got the digital Panopticon, the glowing rectangle you are carrying in your pocket right this second. Big tech algorithms and massive data tracking have basically replaced that central guard tower. Because we know our data is being collected, what do? We willingly self-censor. We carefully curate our online profiles so we look normal. We are carrying our own tracking devices, effectively policing ourselves on a global scale. It's wild when you think about it. You can see this modern discipline absolutely everywhere. Look at gamification. You've got fitness apps buzzing to tell you if you've walked enough steps today to be normal, or Uber ratings and credit scores quietly punishing you the second you drop below the acceptable standard. Or look at your open concept corporate office. Sure, it's pitched as super collaborative, but without walls, it's just a continuous surveillance machine where everyone is constantly watching everyone else. And look at our schools. Many of them physically resemble prisons with metal detectors and zero-tolerance policies, literally conditioning our youth from day one to accept surveillance as a totally natural part of life. And this brilliantly illustrates Foucault's final overarching concept, the carceral archipelago. Now, an archipelago is just a chain of islands, right? Well, Foucault says the prison isn't some dark anomaly in an otherwise totally free society. Not at all. It's just the most extreme island in a massive chain of disciplinary institutions, schools, clinics, factories, offices, that stretches across our entire world. The exact same mechanisms of observation and normalization that keep a prisoner quiet in a tiny cell are the exact same ones being used right now to keep you quiet and productive at your desk. I know, Foucault's work is undoubtedly uncomfortable. He forces us to realize that the institutions we typically think of as progressive and protective are very often just highly sophisticated tools of compliance. But look, he didn't write all this just to make us paranoid. He wrote it to make us aware, because it's only when you can actually see the bars of the cage that you can figure out a way out. So here's my final question to you. Now that you can finally see the invisible cages of your everyday life, how will you break free?
Please like and subscribe.